All right, guys, so those of you who are within listening distance but grabbing your free alcohol from ABS, please come on by, grab it, come on in, have a seat. We're going to be going over a new project discussion regarding the motor vessel Dwayne Harper that was built at McGinnis. Joining me today is Robert Lynch, who is Senior Project Manager at the South Point, Ohio facility for McGinnis, and then myself, Joshua Sebastian, Engineering Manager at the Shearer Group. We're going to do just a quick highlight of the vessel, kind of give you some of the glory shots, some of the stuff in construction. The real goal for this panel, for this presentation, is to offer more of a unique perspective, less about the boat, but more about what McGinnis learned as they went through the building of the process. They had not built a boat for about 10 years prior to this process. You know, the last one they had built was probably designed on the back of a napkin, and they jumped headlong into building a new towboat, fully engineered, and headlong into Subchapter M and Subchapter N compliance. So the goal, Robert here will be going over a lot of that information of how they got back into the vessel, some of the highlights of the construction, their unique perspective and take on building a vessel with maintenance and the shipyard in mind, and how that translated into the design aspect. And I think that'll be a different take than you normally get when we talk about just a new vessel. So the vessel description, I said the motor vessel Dwayne Harper was featured in Waterways Journal 2 months ago, approximately. 70 feet long, 26 feet wide, powered by two 800 horsepower Mitsubishi engines and 68-inch wheels. It does have a telescoping pilot house. I should have put that picture up first. It does have a telescoping pilot house, and it is essentially made to move the barges around. This is it coming out of this is your enclosed automated blast and paint booth. So as the hull was coming out or being placed on the ways, as we're bringing it in, mostly complete, getting ready to go into the water. There you see the elevating pilot house. This one did have a very unique pilot house, high visibility pilot house. Rob will go into some of the aspects of why that was chosen and some of what they gained from that. Did have a very tall height of eye, so we can see over any of the larger loads or emptied barges. Again, just in the mostly down position. The ladder on the back, as typical, does articulate up and down, keeps itself level. That was probably one of the more challenging parts of the design, was getting that ladder and getting the articulation proper on the vessel. So a view of the pilot house from the front. There's from the interior side, so you can see very high visibility for the captain to be able to look around, see his fleet deck, see what's going on around him, see off to the side. So he has really good, 180-degree visibility all the way down and around him. So the engine room, the engines and generators are sitting down in the lower hold. There is removable grating on top of the engines to allow easier access and walk around in the upper part of the engine room. The lower part of the engine room, again, Rob will go over some of that, but we raised up the engine beds to make it a little bit easier to work on the engines and maintain them. So it is shortly after it being launched. You see, enclosed the steering, is typical with diamond plate on top just to protect the steering, give them a walking platform. And with that, I'm going to turn over the majority of the discussion here to Mr. Lynch, who's going to go over some of the stuff about McGinnis and more. I said, again, that really unique perspective of coming back into the boat building industry. So with that, Robert?
Good afternoon. Again, my name's Rob Lynch. I'm the Senior Project Manager with McGinnis Incorporated. I've had the good fortune of joining a family-based company that has been around for quite some time. And when you enter a company that's been around since 1913, you're surrounded by a lot of people with some knowledge you can't teach in school. So as you go down a path with engineers or a vision for a new vessel, that's experience that you can't put a price tag on. So as we have developed a shipyard there in South Point, Ohio, at mile 320.4, we went at it in terms of creating an environmentally friendly shipyard, a full-service shipyard, to be able to service barges, serve as a new construction yard in terms of crane barges, boats, truckable tugs, truckable barges, sectional barges. And then on top of that, we supplemented all this with a blast and paint facility that was state-of-the-art with a fully automated blast shop where everything is contained, and 98% of the VOCs are captured as well in the process. So when you look at this as a whole, and we ran the first barge through in 2009. So as this thing has evolved, we've had to look at it in terms of what can we do more efficiently to offer industry in terms of services. And the boat building process came back on the table. Now, being in business since 1913, this is not their first rodeo in building boats. So 20 boats later, since 1913, were built up to just about 10 years ago. So in their process of building boats was more in the line of experience and really didn't utilize engineered drawings for their development of their tugs. So when getting back into this, we kind of looked at what can we do to improve the efficiency of the construction process and how best to go about that. So we've incorporated our own engineer in the yard for the process, which helped exponentially. And then we purchased a 40-foot plasma table in corporation with a 40-foot press brake as well. So when we have the tools in place, we then reached out to the shear group to develop drawings for the boat, and was able to efficiently assemble the plates for the hull, and we did it in a process where we built it upside down and flipped it over after the hull was built. So from a time frame standpoint, what would have taken us 12 to 14 months or longer as you're building a boat, the old way we did it, we were able to get that completed and in the water and sub-M certified in 9 months. So for a yard that hasn't done that in a while, as far as boats are being built, that was a very efficient process, we thought, for our first run on a subchapter M vessel. So, from that aspect, you look at the design, and we were fortunate enough to be able to develop a pilot house that kind of stood out and was a little different than everybody else's that was being put out here recently. And there are some benefits to that as far as 360 degrees in terms of your visual capacity. The pilots really enjoy being able to see everywhere around them, and from an aspect of a jack-up pilot house, it really serves a good purpose. So as we go down the road further into the future, I see a more efficient process and keep developing more efficiencies as we move along. And right now it really sets in the water good, very little vibration, and it was a heavy built boat, wasn't it?
Very.
So
Yeah, and it was, when we were approached, originally from Rick Griffith approached us, or approached Ed Shearer, and asked what they were looking for. Our process, we're not going to design a light towboat. We design in accordance with the ABS rules, but we also, we tend to make it a little bit on the heavier side, as it generally helps the long life of these vessels. I mean, these vessels we're designing, as we talked a bit, if you guys were in the talk yesterday, we're trying to design these boats to last not 20 years, not 30 years, but 40 to 50 or even longer that this vessel is expected to be in operation. So when you approach your design process with that kind of longevity to the owner, you try to make sure you build it heavy and you build it with a long life factor in there. So, this vessel, the hull and the structure will long outlast many of the components, as it goes through. I think one aspect, we enjoy working directly, with the shipyards, and it's really nice on this one because not only we're working with the shipyard, but the owner as well, and coming up with the design. What was nice when it came to working with the shipyard is, we as engineers, we understand we design remotely generally. We're probably 1,000 miles away from Rob and the factory floor, and they could come to us and say, hey, you've drawn it this way, but we think we have a better way of putting this joint together. Can we do this, this, or that? And we sit down and work through their process and find out a good solution that we are comfortable with as an engineer, but is easy to build. And because of that, that's, I think, one of the reasons why we were able to turn the boat around in such a short amount of time, because they were able to approach us. And even through the process, they found something like, listen, this isn't quite working how it looks. Can we make this adjustments? And we were able to make those adjustments on the fly, get the responses back to them, and keep them moving on their production. And I think having, they did have an engineer on site as well, which facilitated, because we could give him a lot of the information, and he was a good go-between on that. So I think that was a good compatible relationship we had going through that process. And I think we came up with a very unique, very well-performing vessel. It's coming in. And the pilot house is probably what we spent the most of the time designing, it seems like, because it was such a unique, trying to get that shape just right so that it could be laid out and cut properly. So when they bent it around and curved it, that it's, the windows, even though it's curved, it's a fully curved surface, but the windows are flat. And every single one of those windows is exactly the same, so that we don't have 6 unique windows. It's all one window. We just had to bend everything the right way so that the frames would line up, and you could make the adjustments, but it was all a smooth surface. That was, I think, hands down, probably the most challenging pilot house that we've ever designed, and I think it's a truly neat piece.
Yeah. And also, from a shipyard perspective, you go into the yard and you get the experiences of the guys that are there, and we had enough dialogue with the guys on the ground, and had enough collaboration and communication between Josh and the guys on the ground to make the connections that would make your next docking easier. So some of the perspectives of those guys, as simple as pad eyes on the stacks. Most of these boats come into the yards and have no pad eyes on the stacks. So you're spending time welding pad eyes on it. So, from that to the way the engine is laid out design-wise, being able to be removed efficiently. And, it's just things like that will reduce your shipyard time when you're talking a ROI on your investment down the road.
Yeah, and I think that was a unique perspective. I don't know if you have any more on what design process, what went through your guys' head on some of the requests you had when it came to long-term maintenance, since this is a boat you're owning and operating right now.
Right.
And again, I think that's where it is valuable having that shipyard telling you, hey, this is what makes our lives easier to help maintain these vessels, because you've been doing it for over 100 years. And you have some of that operational knowledge of those guys that you mentioned on the floor some of these have been building boats longer than I've been alive. And there's that knowledge that you're never going to, you're not going to replace easily. I do want to open up, if anyone has, any questions regarding the design or the shipyard or some of the challenges. Oh, I did have one other question, Rob. How was working with the Coast Guard with Subchapter M? What did you find with that process?
Well, we had a unique relationship with the Coast Guard in that area of the country. They approached us and were eager for boat building to take place on the Middle Ohio River. And they bent over backwards in order to help us with the Subchapter M requirements, and had enough foresight and they spent the time to sit down and look at our drawings ahead of time, and kind of helped us head off a lot of issues that we may not have foreseen with the new Sub-M regulations. So that was a unique opportunity that we had with collaborating with the Coast Guard that really improved the efficiencies in the construction process. So that's an invaluable tool that the industry has, being able to go with a government agency and collaborate in those terms, and feeling free enough in which to do so. So I don't know whether it was just the personalities that were in our region or not, but it was absolutely amazing how much technical knowledge they had with that particular group, which helped out tremendously on our end. So, from that aspect, that helped out tremendously. And then also, when you have an engineering group that gets back with you quickly, and when you've got Bruce McGinnis standing over top of you going, get this thing built, but you're waiting on an engineer to get you an answer back, you're kind of in a rock and a hard place. So that's also key, is being able to work with a group that is responsive in those terms very quickly. So in the construction process, when you're going 100 miles an hour, you do not have time waiting on your engineer to get back with you.
Yeah, so that's definitely one thing we always made sure was to, if you had a question, because we knew when they're asking a question, a lot of times the guy sitting there with the welding gun waiting for an answer. And, we can't wait a week or even a couple of days. It's, when Rob calls, I see his cell phone coming up across my number. I'm like, I got to answer now because something, we need to make an adjustment or we need to give an answer on something. Going back to the Coast Guard, now I am biased. I am ex-Coast Guard myself. We've had the same experience with a lot of projects, is early engagement with the Coast Guard. Don't try to hide things from them. Don't try to bring them in at the last minute and surprise them. Get them engaged early. Approach them at the beginning of your project. Get their buy-in. They will help you tremendously for the most part. We've seen that on any of our very unique projects. When we were doing one with TxDOT for big lithium-ion batteries, we engaged with the local Coast Guard day one. We brought them into the construction meeting and said, you need to be part of this process. They're 9 months from laying steel, but be part of the process. We want you to know what's going on in your area. And they have been tremendously helpful as a result. So if you're looking, building your shipyard or an owner, get your Coast Guard, both where it's being built and your captain of the port where you're going to be operating, get them involved early. And don't keep them in the dark, and they, for the most part, will help you out tremendously. They are a valuable asset. Make sure you use them. Like I said, I am biased, but that's always been my perception, even on the outside, that they are very helpful. Even all the guys at the MSC. If you engage with them early, tell them what you're trying to do. We've always found them very helpful. Now, they're not always going to agree with you, but they're going to try to help you find a solution to get to where you need to go.
You know, I was thinking too, from another unique aspect that I enjoyed this project for was the fact that a benefit to industry would be if you're building in a shipyard and you've got bugs to work out of your new build, which you are always going to have. Am I right there?
Absolutely.
So, you know, 99% of the time the boat you're building is moving on the inland waterways. Where are your locations in which to address these issues that you're going to run into? And the McNational side of things, with our location, our strategic dry dock locations, I didn't have to worry about engaging with another company and then bringing them up to speed. When you have a service group like that, you are able to address the needs of you know, addressing some of the issues you may have with your new build in the same group of workers and managers, which makes it extremely streamlined in the process in order to get a fully functional boat moving and materials on the inland waterways without any issues. You're always going to have that bug that comes up that stops the show, and you need a dry dock ASAP. So, you know, that was a good benefit there for sure.
We've got a couple more minutes. I know I stole at least the first question. Anyone else have any other questions? Yes, sir.
As far as builds, can you tell me the price of steel? Yeah. We've had a bunch of inquiries for new boats, and of course this is a new marketing gig for our end, but I think the price of steel's got some people gun shy right now until we can see where that stabilizes. And you know, everybody's dealing with the same stuff as far as your supply chain. So you know, I think everybody needs to get comfortable with that, and then we'll see where it goes. But we'll see how that plays out.
And we've been working with McGinnis to help develop a range of stock designs for them, you know, up to their 4,000 horsepower capacity. So when someone is ready and they get comfortable, these guys are ready to hit the ground running and can turn around an efficient project for you. And any other questions? Yes, sir. So the subchapter M technical review was done under the Coast Guard. Well, we did it as under PE review per subchapter M. As far as the operation, you guys, are you going with it? What are you going, TPO, or are you on Coast Guard option for the inspections?
TPO. Mm-hmm.
They're going with the TPO option. All right. If there's no other questions, I thank you guys all for your time. If you do have anything else offline, please feel free to get a hold of us. We're glad to talk about boats or any of that stuff. It's what we all love to be around, so that's why we're all here. Thanks,
you.
guys.